Bo Nix and Cedric Tillman are sneaky good fantasy starts in week 8. We dig into the best sleepers and DFS plays of the week on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. We truly appreciate it. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, you can find my work at sportingnews.com covering NFL, fantasy, and betting.
Make sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube for us. Leave us a review on wherever you're listening to podcasts. That will help us grow, helps us be here every day for you to help you win your fantasy championships. Before we get into our sleepers, I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even have to win to get that $50. So go to PrizePicks and start having some fun over there. Now we'll get into our favorite PrizePicks picks of the week later on today's show. Also our FanDuel lineups, but we got to start with our sleepers of the week. We give you one sleeper at each position: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. Let's start with our quarterback here, Bo Nix, rookie quarterback for the Broncos. He's actually been doing it up, getting a lot of rushing yards. But he gets the Panthers this week. An amazing matchup for him.
Yeah, the only concern we have here, Michelle, is if they'll do a Javonte Williams game again, but it's really hard for a running back to duplicate a multiple touchdown performance like that. And I think this is a good opportunity as well for Sean Payton to get Bo Nix going in the passing game. The matchups are really great all around, whether you go to Cortland Sutton or Devon Bailey. All these guys are going to be open all day long. So I think Broncos going to be aggressive early. I think he gets 2 combined touchdowns, probably more than 200 yards passing. And I think I can also see him get 50 yards rushing in this game. So I just think the Panthers defense is that bad, that depleted. Pretty much not much else to stay there. I mean, if Marcus Mariota can come off the bench after Jane Daniels has had a 50-yard run and still finishes a top 12 quarterback, you got to like Bo Nix this week.
Yeah, I mean, he's getting it done with his legs. 61 rushing yards and 75 rushing yards over the last 2 weeks. The Panthers have just given up, I think. And with Bryce Young back on offense, they're probably never going to be able to keep that ball in offense. This should be just another slaughter. So Bo Nix is a really solid play this week. I completely see him getting a 20 fantasy point game, and he's done that in 2 of the last 3 weeks. So that's not like us being super bold here. Moving on to running backs. You love Ray Davis this week against the Seahawks. Love is a strong word, but you like him as a sleeper. I actually have a different running back because we couldn't quite agree on this position. I'm going with Tyrone Tracy against my Steelers, but let us know why you like Ray Davis.
Well, it was tough for me because I actually had that decision, Ray Davis or Tyrone Tracy, and I'm still probably going to take it to the wire here. And I get it, Tracy has been getting the touches here, but I also don't see another game where the Giants can have a positive game script against the Steelers. And it was pretty ugly last week, right? The split with him and Devin Singletary. Well, I feel that split is arrow pointing downward after a hot start for both guys. The arrow's pointing up here for the Bills. Like James Cook is back healthy. Ray Davis looked great filling in for him. Too much to the point where they had to get him involved, right? And they need weapons. I get it. They got Amari Cooper now, but the way you attack the Seahawks is with your running backs, your tight ends, work in the middle of the field. So I love Ray Davis. They're getting him the key touches. What I also like about this kid, he came in advertised as a power runner. That was going to help on the early downs, but he's a great pass catcher. They used him a lot of ways in Kentucky. He can stretch the field. We've seen him make some big plays and win contested balls there. So I love Ray Davis. He's just an offensive weapon. And the Bills, they're smart. They're going to get him involved in this game for sure with Joe Brady.
Listen, Ray Davis, especially if the Bills have a lead against the Seahawks, he should have a solid.
He was great last week when they had a lead. So, you'll get the touches, I think. I mean, I think this is their backfield because I don't think they want to overwork James Cook. So I think you'll see Ray Davis kind of getting some key work every week at least.
I think it'll be interesting to keep an eye on this Giants backfield. It was Tyrone Tracy who got the start last week over Devin Singletary, even though he's back. It was Tyrone Tracy that played nearly 70% of the snaps, while Singletary was on the field for just 20%. And it didn't turn into much production because the game script, the hard matchup against the Eagles. But he was on the field for the majority of the third down plays, all of the red zone plays for the Giants. And the Steelers have surprisingly allowed a running back to score at least 17.5 fantasy points in each of the last 4 weeks. Now that isn't full PPR, and we typically do half PPR, but Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor, Rico Dowdle, and Alexander Madison all had really good fantasy days against the Steelers. So I think Tyrone Tracy's a sneaky play this week that you can plug in if you're desperate. Now at wide receiver, this is actually a guy I'm willing to plug in my flex. Like, even if I'm not desperate, I like him. Cedric Tillman against the Ravens. He got his first chance last week. He did it up, 12 targets, 8 receptions, 81 receiving yards. Clearly the lead wide receiver on the team, right? It seems like the targets are going to go to Njoku and Tillman. They get a great matchup against the Ravens secondary this week.
Yeah, they're playing the key pass catcher roles on this team right now with Amari Cooper gone and Jameis Winston willing to put the ball up a little bit more. Jameis Winston is very akin to what we got from Joe Flacco last year, right? A former starter who's just going to put the ball up. He's going to be fearless throwing out of the pocket. So this offense hasn't changed too much. I mean, I know it's Ken Dorsey in there, but when you look at this team, they still want to throw the ball with Dorsey. And right now, I mean, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, these guys have just been not good. They've traded for both these guys. They're just mediocre players. Tillman is a little bit more exciting. I think that's the reason they could afford to trade Amari Cooper to see what he's got. So, yeah, it has to be the Tillman and Njoku show. And the Ravens give it up to wide receivers, to tight ends. We saw that against the Buccaneers. Even after Mike Evans went down and all the way through Chris Godwin going down, the Bucs were able to move the ball with a bunch of guys. So it's a Tillman and Njoku show with a lot of passing because we know the Browns, with just Nick Chubb, are pretty much not going to be able to run on the Ravens.
Yeah, I think the Ravens are going to destroy the Browns. Yeah. So Jameis Winston's going to have to throw all game long. Another game that should be a high scoring affair, or a lot of passing anyways on both sides. It's this Buccaneers versus Falcons game. So that's why we have Cade Otton. I don't even know if we can consider him a sleeper anymore, but this is the last week we'll probably be able to put him in this category. Without Baker, or without Chris Godwin, without Mike Evans, Baker's going to have to target him. He was already, I mean, he's running the second most routes among all tight ends this year. He's always on the field. He played 98% of the snaps last week. And now he's finally needed, right? He wasn't needed before because they had 2 elite wide receivers. Now he's needed. I think he's going to be the top target in this offense. And then also for the Falcons, Justin Simmons has a hamstring injury. If he misses, that would be a huge loss for them.
Yeah, and these are players that either Michelle and I have talked about on the show here, Davis and Tracy being rookies that you want to get, and Cade Otton. I've been talking him up a lot, and a lot of it has been tied to Liam Cohen being the offense coordinator. I thought he was going to be maybe that third key target who emerges for Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And I don't know why Davis came to mind there, but when you look at Evans and Godwin being down, Otton has to be the guy. I mean, anytime you see a tight end put up 100 yards, again, that's exciting because there's not many tight ends in this league who can do that, even if they get targeted a ton. But he's one of them. So again, we'll get to another targeted guy that is definitely a must play going forward because of the receiver situation. But Otton, I love it. He scored 2 weeks ago. He has the 100-yard game. He's on his way to breaking out as a tight end.
Yeah, he really, really is. When you're a necessity like that, that's a good shot that you're going to be a good fantasy tight end. We're going to move on to our daily fantasy, info here with our favorite picks of the week in both PrizePicks and FanDuel. But if you don't play DFS, maybe you'll want to try it this week. But also it's still very relevant to your fantasy lineups because these are all guys we like this week. So we're going to get into our favorite 6 PrizePicks picks of the week right after a short break. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. Vinnie and I are going to give you our 6 favorite PrizePicks picks of the week on right after I get through talking about PrizePicks here. But if you want to get started and play with us, all you have to do is download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even have to win. PrizePicks, run your game. This episode is also brought to you by Zbiotics. It's a pre-alcohol probiotic drink. It's the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. And here's how it works. Like when you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's that byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break down this byproduct down so you feel much better the next morning. So this is all you have to remember. Just take the Zbiotics as your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, pace yourself. Drink your water. I love to have a glass of water in between each drink. It's just something smart to do. And then you get to wake up the next morning feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. Go to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use the code LockedOnNFL at checkout. Zbiotics is backed with 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL at checkout for 15% off. Vinny, I'm really starting to love your prize picks that have the quarterbacks running. You hit on Geno Smith again last week. Your streak for hitting on these prize picks, running back or quarterback rushing yards, I should say, on fire. And your first one is, of course, a quarterback and his rushing yards. So tell us your favorite prize picks pick of the week.
Okay, maybe I'm getting a little bit cocky here because we're going for a demon pick.
All right.
And I'm going Jalen Hurts, the team that's allowed the most rushing yards to quarterbacks, all the way back to Jacoby Brissett in week 1. They've made everybody look really good running at quarterback, are the Cincinnati Bengals. They just play a certain type of zone defense. They're going to be worrying about the running game traditionally with Saquon Barkley. They're going to be worrying about the deep ball. What happens? The C's part of the middle of the field, Jalen Hurts can take off and run. So they're averaging, I think, giving up around 35 rushing yards per game to quarterbacks. That's the safe way to go with Jalen Hurts. But I'm going the hard way here at 49.5 more than that rushing yards against the Bengals. He's not playing well as a passer. I'm just going to say that. He's getting lucky with some of these deep balls that are going up. If you look at the way he's playing, it's not great. So what do you do to break out of a slump? You run. We saw that with Josh Allen a few weeks ago as well when he was struggling. So I love it. Josh Allen set the tone here, and I think Jalen Hurts can do very similar damage here to the Bengals in that style and get his passing game going as well.
Yeah, I'm loving this matchup for him. Just the matchup on both sides. I hope it's a high-scoring game. And I'm never going to go against your quarterback rushing projections because you have always hit them. So I love this for you. Let's see if your streak can continue. Now, I'm going with a quarterback as well, but not his rushing yards. I'm going with his passing touchdowns. It's also a demon pick.
Wow.
So make extra money if you hit it. But I'm going with Jordan Love, more than 2.5 passing touchdowns. So he has to throw 3 touchdowns in this game to hit it. But he has thrown 3 touchdowns in each of the last 2 weeks and in 3 of the last 4 weeks. The Jaguars have allowed the most passing touchdowns in the league this season. And over the last 3 weeks, Joe Flacco threw 3 touchdowns against the Jaguars. Caleb Williams threw 4. Drake May had 2, fine, but still, it was his first start or second start. Josh Allen earlier in the year had 4 against them. Like, this is a perfect matchup for Jordan Love to do it. And he's just a touchdown machine.
Yeah, and he's always looking to throw in the red zone. Even Josh Jacobs, who had never caught a touchdown pass in his career, got a touchdown pass from Jordan Love. So, he wants to pad his stats, thankfully for us, and we're all playing him in fantasy, whether DFS or seasonal, that he should have a big week this week, no matter how you cut it. Now, yeah, we both went for Demon. That tells you how much we love these guys, Hurts and Love. So I'll go to my next one, and this is a former Chief. I think you're going to have a current Chief with your second pick, but I have Tyreek Hill, 85.5 receiving yards. Now, this is a very high number, given what Tyreek Hill has not done in recent weeks, but he's also not had Tua Tagovailoa as his quarterback. Now, this team, the Cardinals, have given up a lot of big plays, especially inside, going all the way back to Khalil Shakir early in the season. So he's kind of a slot guy that has some speed and quickness. Tyreek Hill is that type of player as well. What did the Cardinals do last week? They gave up a ton of plays inside to the likes of Will Dissly and Stone Smart. These are tight ends, but that's kind of who was subbing in for kind of the slot work because the Chargers were shorthanded. So I do like Tyreek Hill getting going this week. Come on, let's do it, Tyreek. Let's see your 2023 form with your quarterback back healthy here. 85.5, I should say. You'll get 86 or more there against the Cardinals this week.
Yeah, I mean, last year at this time, his line would have been like 120,
Yeah.
right? So I hope
bargain.
he comes back, yeah, and he lights it back up and he helps these guys. But Tyreek Hill, I mean, we both have him as a top 6 ranked wide receiver this week. We fully expect him to be back, so I like that. Like you said, I'm going with the Chief. It's Kareem Hunt, more than 82.5 rushing plus receiving yards. It's just simply like an easy projection, right? I mean, week 4, he doesn't even play the full game. Like this first game with the Chiefs this season, playing at all this season, he gets 85 scrimmage yards. Week 5, 117 scrimmage yards. Week 7, he did only hit 83. Tougher defense against 49ers, but he had 24 touches. The last 2 weeks, he's had 28 and 24 touches. There's no way they don't run a ton against the Raiders. And the Raiders have allowed a running back to hit at least 85 scrimmage yards in 6 of 7 weeks so far this season. 4 of those running backs had at least 111 scrimmage yards, so well past this 83-yard projection. And those guys weren't anything amazing. It's Chuba Hubbard, J.K. Dobbins, Javonte Williams, and Najee Harris. So I love this for Kareem Hunt, more than 82.5 scrimmage yards.
Yeah, I don't think he even needs to catch a pass to get to this point. So that's the other thing is the Raiders are so bad against the run, and the Chiefs have just been feeding him the ball relentlessly, and they should dominate this game with game script and Hunt getting the ball a lot. My third pick here, if you've been tracking the show, especially if you listen to our wide receiver and tight end rankings, and you should listen to our show every day, but our tight end wide receiver rankings are on the previous day, Thursday, and we looked at Dalton Kincaid versus David Njoku, so I thought I'd have a little fun with this because I knew that you were taking David Njoku for your last one. I'm taking Dalton Kincaid, more than 40.5 receiving yards against the Seahawks. Now, I did mention they made a trade for Ernest Jones, and that might actually hurt the Titans against Sam Laporta, but Ernest Jones, I realize, is a short area cover type guy. He's not going to stay with Dalton Kincaid, who's going to stretch the field over in the middle. Now, Dawson Knox may do absolutely nothing, which also helps Dalton Kincaid get those numbers, but he's the field stretching guy. Khalil Shakir will be on probably seeing some Devin Witherspoon in the slot. The inside big play guy, I think big play guys, throwing it back to earlier show, are going to be Ray Davis and Dalton Kincaid in the middle of the field. So I really like the usage of Kincaid of late, and I think it really blows up here. I think he can have a big game, and it's just more than 40.5 receiving yards against the Seahawks.
Yeah, I don't like Dalton Kincaid this week for for fantasy, but he could still get 41 receiving yards, right, and not be very good.
You can do it on one play. I think he does it in one play this week.
Okay. Well, I'll say maybe 2 plays, right? You might need 2 plays to get there, but I don't hate it, but I wouldn't personally put any money down on Dalton Kincaid.
It's fair.
But it's a low enough projection that seems like they agree with me that he's not very good.
It's not the player, it's the number, Michelle.
Yes.
We're not looking at the number, not the player.
Well, I'm looking at both the player and the number on my last one. It's David Njoku, more than 11.5 fantasy points. So with the fantasy points projections on PrizePicks, it's full PPR. So you get a full point anytime they catch a ball. So you got to love that. 11.5 is super low for David Njoku, who's likely going to be the focal point of this offense moving forward. He scored 23.6 fantasy points in full PPR last week, led the team with 14 targets, 10 receptions, 76 he didn't lead the team in receiving yards, but he still had 76 receiving yards, and he scored the touchdown as soon as Jameis Winston came in. It was like Winston could figure out how to throw a touchdown. But really, this 11.5 fantasy points, all he needs is 6 receptions for 56 yards. Like, that's all he needs to hit that. It's too low. He's going to get double-digit targets. And the Ravens are giving up quite a bit of yardage to tight ends this year.
Yeah, you make a lot of great points with David Njoku, but another point you made is go after the fantasy points. If you don't like the rushing or receiving yards or passing yards or the touchdown, numbers there. You can also tap into this, right? Good old fantasy numbers. And this is also good because if you're trusting somebody in your lineups, right, for seasonal, that you can just transition and go there with David and Njoku. So another way to play PrizePicks. We don't always talk about the fantasy points, but they're right there for you as well. So many ways you can play on PrizePicks, and a lot of fun. So get in on it. That's our 6 picks of the week here for PrizePicks. We will reveal our FanDuel lineups here in our final segment as we close the week, looking at a little bit more DFS. All right, Michelle, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It's time to get a big return. It's the second half of the season here in the NFL. It's officially started here. The Rams upset the Vikings to start it all on Thursday night, so there could be some fun in store for the weekend, some surprises, things that may be going against the numbers. So you can check it out yourself and look at those top bets at FanDuel.com for the week 8 action on Sunday and Monday. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game as well, you can check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's right, $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet, win or lose, there at FanDuel. Check it out, FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Michelle, this is the fun time as well. I just like Friday's show because we wrap up everything nicely in a bow, tied into how we can add a little bit more to our seasonal fun here. So we always close, if you're new to the show, with our FanDuel lineups for the main slate. So I'll let Michelle reveal her quarterback first, who you're going with.
Yeah, I'm going with Kirk Cousins. I guess I'm chasing those points from a few weeks ago when he played the Buccaneers and destroyed them. He hasn't really done anything besides that game, but the Buccaneers still haven't fixed their defense. They're still terrible. So I think Kirk Cousins, he was only 7,100, one of the cheapest starting quarterbacks of the week. And, just too good of a matchup to miss out on that cost.
I like it. I mean, he should continue to light up this defense. It's not improved since the last time, and we just had Lamar Jackson torch it. So, yeah, so that's a really good pick. And before, we did talk a lot about Bo Nix. So, look, he's behind Spencer Rattler and Andy Dalton in price. I mean, this is ridiculous. These guys are not even in good. One is not even starting this week. And, 6,900. I'm just taking a cheapie here with Bo Nix. I mean, this is going to be the best return on investment I could find here at quarterback. So saving my money for elsewhere.
I will say Kirk Cousins is only $200 more. So I feel a little bit better about that. My running backs are Kareem Hunt, because I just talked about how I think Kareem Hunt's going to have a great game against the Raiders. And then I'm going to go, you're taking a chance on Tyreek Hill making a huge comeback with Tua. I'm going with Devin Achane, balling out now that Tua's back, because he always balls out when Tua's back there.
Yeah, I have Kareem Hunt as my lead back here because I did save some money, so I paid up for him at 8,100. The other back I paid for was Kenneth Walker III. Now, the Bills still struggle against running backs. It didn't matter that Kenneth Walker saw less action on the field than Zach Charbonnet. He maximizes his plays, right? Catching touchdowns, just looking really good this season, I think, overall. I mean, if you could just stay healthy, just shake off all these things. It's always an illness or something that's slowing him down, but that's the only thing. So I like Kenneth Walker this week at 7,800 to build on that big game from last week. And the way you attack the Bills, much like the way you attack the Seahawks, is with the running back.
Yeah, if the Seahawks want to win this game against the Bills, they should run, especially with DK banged up. Who even knows if he plays? That was good money spent, I believe. Now, I spent up on wide receivers, so I wasn't able to, go for one of those elite running backs because I went with A.J. Brown in a matchup we love for that Philly Bengals game. He's just always great. And the Bengals do not have a corner that can guard A.J. Brown. And I'm going with Drake London to finish up my stack here with Kirk Cousins against the Buccaneers. Terrible secondary, who, by the way, Drake London ate up against the Buccaneers just a few weeks ago. And then Rashad Bateman, I've been talking about him. Zay Flowers hasn't been able to practice this week with that ankle injury. That's what I was worried about. He played through the game, but once you let that thing cool down, it's going to blow up, and we'll see if he can practice and play. But Rashad Bateman has been like the go-to wide receiver, I should say, for Lamar Jackson the last few weeks. So I'm willing to go with him in what is actually a pretty good matchup against the Browns.
Yeah, I like those three receivers for sure based on how you spent at the other positions. Now, Tyreek Hill, we talked about him. Yeah, I have him in FanDuel and PrizePicks this week. He is my leading wide receiver. And again, not only will you not get a low projection like that for his receiving yards, but his price here is very nice. At 7,600, you won't get him cheap very often. So enjoy it while you can, because I think he's going to go way up. So, and I also do want a piece of this Eagles passing game. I went the other way with Devonta Smith at 7,300. We love him as well. Really, A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, between the three corners of the Bengals, this is the best, probably secondary matchup and advantage for any receivers this week. So you definitely want to have Brown or Smith, I think, in a lot of your DFS lineups. And then I'm doing a stack with Bo Nix. I'm not doing Devon Bailey. I can't do it. So I'm going Cortland Sutton. Like, I don't love this, but I needed a stack with Bo Nix. If I think Bo Nix is going to have a good game, Cortland Sutton has to score in this game. So that's what I have to look at. I mean, the secondary is so bad, and he's kind of been ungreased here. So let him loose a little bit. Look, Devon Bailey shouldn't be the go-to guy here. I think it has to be Sutton. So again, maybe they'll showcase him for a trade, surprise trade here. So get Sutton out there. Let's see him.
Yeah, I mean, that was hard to swallow, but I also had to put in a wide receiver in my flex that I don't feel great about, but I needed a super, super cheap guy because that's all the money I had left after spending everything. It's Jalen McMillan for the Buccaneers. It was only 4,900. That's what I needed. That was the amount of money I had left. He was the best option. And listen, I don't have a ton of trust that he's going to be great without Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, but he's going to have the opportunity. And that's all I can hope for, right? When you're going with this cheap, the opportunity, and maybe he'll surprise us. So that's who I threw in my flex.
Yeah, maybe I should have put this guy as my wide receiver to make my flex look a little bit different. But I had Brian Thomas Jr. So I'm going with him as my flex. It just happened to be that I built a stack first with Nixon Sutton. So that's why he's in my flex versus one of my three wide receivers. But 6,500, we love the matchup. Again, the Jaguars, don't forget about them. On the other side, we know we like the Packers wide receivers, but the Jaguars receivers are also in a good position, probably being a negative game script. A lot of throwing for Trevor Lawrence. So actually didn't look half bad. I know it was against the Patriots, but the Packers' pass defense is also pretty weak.
Now to finish up my lineup, I got David Njoku in my tight end position. Of course I did. And he was actually like the 12th most expensive tight end. That's just too cheap. He's going to finish as a top 5 guy this week. And then I finish off with the Broncos. They were the second most expensive defense. I don't care. They're playing against the Panthers and Bryce Young, and the Broncos have been such a good fantasy defense. They're going to eat Bryce Young alive. So yeah, I'm willing to pay up for that. And that's my lineup.
Well, my tight end is going to be no surprise to you, Michelle. It is David Njoku. I'm putting him in the lineup.
You're going to say Dalton Kincaid.
No, I'm putting him in the lineup. But yes, I wanted to second your David Njoku love because I actually like him as well this week. I don't have, unfortunately, him in any league. I have Dalton Kincaid. So I got to stick up with a guy I'm going to play somewhere. But David Njoku, like if I still had hair, I mean, this guy has some great hair with I just love seeing his mugshot. Like he's a good-looking dude, and he's got the good hair color. Like he is just a built dude, and I'm always like shocked that he wasn't that good until now, right? Like the last couple of years with, go figure, Joe Flacco and Jameis Winston thrown to him. This is maybe the guy that I used to be so frustrated with, but now they need him, and when they need him, he's just a pro. He goes out there, this team stinks. He just plays hard every week. So I love that. I appreciate about him. And he's going to produce this week for both of our teams this week at 5,600. Price is unbeatable. And then to close it out, if you like the Broncos, I also like a team from the AFC West. It's the Chiefs against the Raiders. I'm doing a little bit of correlated stack with Kareem Hunt. So I got a double stack here at QB and wide receiver, defense, and running back. I think the Chiefs take it to Gardner Minshew. By the way, they lost last to the Raiders. So they're going to remember that tee off on Gardner Minshew. Aiden O'Connell was the last QB to beat them. So again, yet another break for the Chiefs before they play the Buccaneers without their wide receivers. So this defense is just going to keep on rolling.
Yeah, that's a great play too. I just couldn't pass the Broncos,
Yeah.
but the Chiefs are going to eat up on the Raiders as well. That is it for today's episode. Thank you to you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Every dayers will be back on Monday. If you want to hit that subscribe button on YouTube, we'd be very, very grateful. Also, leave us a review on whatever podcast app you're listening to us on. We hope you all win your matchups this weekend and enjoy your football Sunday. We'll talk to you on Monday. Bye, y'all.